carries. On to C, plan of operation amendment for 5 Diamonds Inc., care of Tom Kilnick, at West 234, South 3555 West Paul Parkway. The recommendation from the Plan Commission was a modified plan of operation. Is there a motion or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, may I make one quick comment? Based on the comments from the citizens, I think, and I talked, there were comments during the break also, we might be able to clarify the dusk one by saying sunset. There is a set time every day. You can call up and find out the statutory sunset time. And voting laws reference sunset time. It's a half hour before or after on the voting law, but at least we won't have an issue of what constitutes dusk. It's just a suggestion that if we say sunset, that is always a time that sun sets. Okay. And then the other one was they didn't know what a special event or fundraisers, and one of the plan commissioners asked me that, and I thought it meant it was defined as other than league play. But I may be wrong because I don't have the whole history. I don't know if that's broad enough or not broad enough to handle when they have to give the notice and then not notice. I know they have a lot of tournaments for the league. I don't guess that's not league play, but I don't know whether that constitutes a special event. But I think the comment that we don't define what a special event is a good comment. Fundraisers and special events. So I just throw that out. I said parentheses defined as other than league play, but that may not work. I don't know. I don't know if Catholic Memorial is considered, I think that's a league play. You know.
Mr. Kelnick, you want to come on up? What would be defined, how would you define, or how did you intend special events and fundraisers? Obviously, we all know what a fundraiser is. What is a special event, and if we said non-league play or tournament play, would that be adequate?
Well, the one, the for instances that we've had so far, when a boy was 10 years old, 2 weeks prior to his team came up from Illinois, he took a ball in the throat and he was killed on the field in Illinois. And the parents still traveled with him. We had a big tournament. The word kind of got out. The other teams did a salute to each other, to that team. We raised money all day long for this kid. We've done breast cancer awareness stuff. To say that it wouldn't coincide with a tournament probably isn't. That could happen. League, I doubt, because league is just a one-day deal. They come for 2.5 hours and then they're gone.
Well, we're trying to decide when you would have to give the notice and when you wouldn't have to give the notice. What do you call the events that you have, like on a weekend where teams travel in?
Tournament.
Tournament. See, a lot of fundraisers are also tournaments. That's why you will theoretically host tournaments that are nothing but fundraisers, but they're called tournaments. A lot of my ballparks have those, and that's why I'm struggling with just saying he doesn't have to give notice of any league play or tournaments, because some tournaments will be fundraisers.
But if we're having a fundraiser that has no PA system, and it's that, for instance, where this mother comes up and says, "Can we raise money for this boy's family?" I mean, we didn't make anything out of it besides putting a couple of cans out with his picture and a story of what happened. Obviously, there's no need to call for that, and quite frankly, it happened the morning of we did it. So we didn't bring any additional attention to the tournament. So.
I'm struggling. I don't know if the board has any
Suggestions?
The motion in a second before we get into a discussion, right?
Well, but if you made the motion, I wanted to give you some proposed language, so when you make the motion, but that, technically parliamentary procedure says that, but most municipalities feel the need to, so we don't have to amend and amend and amend, like, to tighten up the language, but, you know, you're correct. If you wanna wait for the motion, that's fine, but we might have to then amend the motion if we have to deal with this issue.
Somebody be willing to make a motion for discussion purposes?
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the plan commission's recommendation for discussion purposes.
I'll second. Suggestions starting with fundraisers or special events for a definition.
Well, I think Attorney Macy's right. We have it in there. We need to define exactly what is considered a fundraiser. So, is it anything that's not a scheduled event at the beginning of the year? Attorney Macy, do you have any suggestions as to how that should read?
I don't know, I think your suggestion's a great suggestion to begin with, but I don't know whether they have a calendar that, a schedule that's done at the beginning of the year or not, so I can't address that.
Couldn't we tie it to the amplification system? Here again, if someone comes to me and wants to raise money for dogs and cats, I'm not gonna make a big to-do and grab the bullhorn and yell, let's raise money for dogs and cats. We're gonna put a jar on the counter with a picture. I think for the breast cancer awareness deal, we did, we had the sausage races and everybody bid on who was gonna win to raise money for, you know. So I would suspect any big fundraisers, however that has to be termed, would be connected to the use of amplification.
We just list a few examples and then say how they matter, so breast cancer, comma, fire, police, comma,
Who-
and like major.
Yeah, who hosts the tournaments for the youth tournaments that come from all over? Is that something you host?
I do some, the park gets rented by international companies. We staff it, monitor it, they get their name on it.
How often is that other than league play and your sponsorship? I mean, is that 50 times a year, 10 times a year? I mean,
My tournaments?
no, other than your tournaments.
Oh, well, I think we have 11 weekend tournaments,
That are sponsored by other entities than yourself?
or me. I think I do around 7.
Well, where I was going is that we could define special events or fundraisers or other than activities sponsored by him. You know, just saying that he only has to give us notice when he's not running the event. He's still running the compound, obviously, but that may have been what was intended, I can't say. We knew what he was gonna do, we just didn't necessarily know what else he might do.
That makes
How-
sense?
No,
How did we get to linking fundraiser with amplification? I know something got us there, but what is it?
I think it's the only time, at this particular time, we would use it. And it's the only time we've used it in the past.
Amplification was permitted.
So we don't care as a board, or the planning commission didn't care if they have a regular baseball game and decide to erect amplification equipment? Because I'll bet you they care. Right? I mean, isn't that the real issue? The amplification?
No, part of it was for crowd control and emergency personnel.
Amplification, you mean?
No, for the
Oh, for the fundraiser.
fundraisers and special events.
Right. And I know some residents had a problem with Catholic Memorial playing the Star Spangled Banner national anthem, and, you know, literally they say, now batting number 3, Joe Blow. It's about that loud. I think Mr. Fisher can attest to being out there on numerous occasions to.
Okay, I was just trying to understand how we got to that link.
Right.
Are you comfortable linking a special event to the use of the PA system? Or amplification?
No.
Okay.
Anything, I don't know if you can choose anything outside the norm.
Are all of your tournaments and all the games are scheduled?
What do you mean?
All, as we sit here today, all of the games for this season are scheduled and all the tournaments are planned and scheduled?
Yes.
Okay, so how about any unscheduled event? Would any unscheduled event be a special event?
Sure, but again, for instance, the dog and cat or the boy who got hurt.
But you're not doing anything out of the norm.
That's what I'm
All
saying.
you're
I
doing
don't
is
know if
setting
you
a
can use it
camp.
outside of the
Mr.
norm.
Chairman, some of the events that are scheduled are fundraisers or special events that he has already scheduled for this year. I know, because he told me this at a prior meeting, that he was attempting to bring the very successful, very popular Make-A-Wish fundraiser event that the police and fire
Yeah.
held. That would be scheduled, but it'd still be a special event, I think, based on the concepts that were
Mhm.
discussed. That's a special event. That clearly, I think, was a special event that was contemplated, I
Right.
would agree.
Exactly.
But it's already scheduled. They know a year in advance or 2 years in advance where they're going to hold that game.
Yeah, it's a tough one, I mean.
Well, that's why I said if it's anything other than what you're sponsoring, what you're hosting, which your entity is the lead on, that's something you just have to give a week's worth of notice. You can give the notice today for the whole year of every one of those, and that's not a problem.
No,
And
but,
then if anyone.
but what classifies a fundraiser, I guess is, then we jump to the amplification system. You don't need to know if I'm putting a jar on my counter to raise money for dogs. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, and I don't know where the special event and fundraiser language came from. I apologize. It's not necessarily material if we're trying to decide when you have to give notice and when you don't have to give notice. I was trying to say, if you're the host, your responsibility, your license, we know what those events are, because, those are the team, but when you're not hosting it, you're renting out the facility, maybe that's what they intended. But I'll defer to those of you who, you gotta look this way, those of you who were here, because we weren't here. If that's what was intended, then, because you've taken away the amplification aspect of it, right? I mean, he can, does it say in here now that he can't have amplification?
It was my understanding that the amplification was only used for the fundraisers.
That's right.
It was not my understanding that amplification was used for other just regular displays.
But does the plan of operations say that, no amplification, other than special events or fundraisers?
The only time that it talks about amplification being allowed is in the condition of fundraisers, but no, there's not a condition that says it's prohibited for all other use.
Well, let's start with that one, that's an easy one. Is that the intent? Apparently Catholic Memorial uses an amplification.
The way I understand it, that was the intent, it was to limit the number of times they could use amplification on the park. So by limiting it to their fundraisers, that limited the number of times they could use it.
Probably accurate.
So does Catholic Memorial use it or doesn't use it?
They do,
And that wouldn't be a special event.
correct.
So how are we dealing with
Not according to the rules.
Are you able, of course you're able to shut them off. Are you willing to shut Catholic Memorial off from using amplification?
What they use, no.
What do they use?
It's a microphone into a boombox, a little radio. And it's put right in front of the people that are watching me.
Yes, but if if the intent was not to have any amplification, and not that long ago, Dan sat here and said, are you gonna live by these rules? And it's gotta get shut off.
They're, I guess, they're tied to their ethic of listening to the national anthem first and foremost, and calling the kid's name out.
I don't think that there's anybody in this room that's gonna say you can't play the national anthem. I certainly won't. But after that, I think it's gotta get shut off. I mean, that was the intent of what was set up.
And if they don't do it, all I can suggest is that there's a fine structure in place. I mean, they're a first-class organization, they're a first-class school. The parents love the game, love their school, and I've asked them on a few occasions to shut it off, and they said, send me a bill. So, if that's a happy medium, they play 9 times there. The girls don't use it, but the boys do. I think they would have no problem paying it.
Well,
And
we
I
haven't
don't
discussed the
believe,
amount.
and I don't believe it, but I don't believe it's a nuisance either. I mean, to pull a bullhorn would be a nuisance.
I don't think that's our intention here today, is to decide that if you violate this, there's gonna be a fine levy. It's, here's the rules. Go from there. We're gonna make an adjustment in here to say you can't use voice amplification for anything other than a fundraiser or special event, and that's how it is. We don't need to go any further than that. Our job right now is to figure out what's a fundraiser and what's a special event. Is it safe to say that any time that a portion of your proceeds is donated to a specific cause, that
Sure.
that would be a fundraiser?
Sure.
You know, anything over $1,000 on any given day, which will prevent, you know, well, you put a cup out for my sick dog, so you didn't label it a fundraiser, so let's put a dollar limit, that it's $1,000 or more in any given day that's donated to a specific cause.
So, I really don't wanna play attorney, but what are you gonna do when he doesn't give us notice and he raises $1,750?
Well, then that's a different,
Cause he didn't know.
that's a different aspect to deal with.
It's not.
We're not here to talk about how we're gonna deal with any issues that he has. We're here to set the rules.
Okay? Well, if we're here to set the rules, we have to set the penalty.
Not necessarily.
Because a rule doesn't have much teeth if there's no penalty.
So are we gonna assess that if he goes past 11 o'clock, there's going to be a specific dollar amount? If his,
I'll let Attorney Macy take his job over down there.
It would be my recommendation that we don't put fines in the site plan time of operation, we should be referring to our nuisance ordinance, and again,
It's the zoning code. They'd be violating the zoning code, so it wouldn't be the nuisance ordinance. Just for clarification, you write a ticket for violating the zoning code because you violated your site plan of operation.
And what does that amount to?
I don't have the bond schedule here.
but again, we're also not gonna be looking at it until we get a written complaint from a resident to follow up on it.
But we're way off topic.
exactly.
What is a special event or a fundraiser, and why are we asking him to notify us this? Is it only because he can't only use amplification at special events and fundraisers? If that's the case, we gotta tighten that up, and then we gotta decide when he has to give notice. He's not using an amplification device when he's putting out a cup for your dog. So we're missing the point. If the point was that he can only have amplification when he gives notice, that's what we should say.
But through the plan commission meeting, you brought it to our attention that part of the reason for the notice was so that the fire and police have a means of knowing what's going on. You brought up the reference of pick and save and their brat fries.
I did. That was an answer to Supervisor Fisher as to why we would want to get a notice of a special event or a fundraiser. But now we're into why do you want notice? he asked me for examples of why we would give notice, and I did say the police and fire are good reasons, but it seems like, and I defer again to those who know the history, was the only reason is because that's the only time he could use amplification.
Here's a comment, I know you're looking to those of us who can fill in the blanks from the past. I don't know that there's anybody in this room that can clearly do that, because to put it mildly, it's been kind of a crooked and cluttered path. I think to suggest that the issue about notification for special events and fundraisers and everything, at least the discussion from my understanding is there has been a linkage to that with the sound amplification system. That's the past history. I think to deny the reality of that simply isn't as it in fact is. I don't know where this gets it with it, but I mean, my perspective on that, we have an ordinance that talks about, I think the words are upsetting the sensibilities of an ordinary person, or words to that effect. That certainly isn't something that is real black and white or definitive, but I mean, it's a practical matter. We're kind of struggling with, I've been there, I've seen Catholic Memorial's sound amplification system in operation, Star Spangled Banner, they do the Pledge of Allegiance or other things. From my perspective, that is a non-issue. I was there to visit one time, and knowing that that was prohibited, trundled on down to the concession stand to express a concern, couldn't even hear it from there. I mean, where I think we're kind of missing the point is we get special events and announces that if you're going to bring people in there with huge sound amplification systems or something, I mean, from my point, I'd sooner, I think the less offensive thing to somebody's, the sensibility of one person is not about Catholic Memorial playing the Star Spangled Banner on something at very low volume. I really think we're missing the point on this whole thing. You're going to have fundraisers, and that's going to be permissible, and bring somebody in there that have huge sound amplification systems, and that could be going till 11 o'clock at night. That's an issue. I don't know, that doesn't get us any further, I'm sure, but it's all about the sound amplification. We got to find a way to get a more practical handle on it, I think.
And that's why we should address that issue and forget about special events and fundraisers and address the sound amplification.
That's what it's about. But that's what it's about. The sound amplification is for special events and fundraisers.
Well, that's not true.
That was the intent. Well, sure it is.
No, that's not the way I remember it. I wasn't here for them all.
All right, well, what is your thoughts on that?
It was the concern of the local residents about amplification being used and them hearing it. I suspect that there haven't been any complaints about Catholic Memorial with their boomboxes because they haven't heard it. That's what I suspect.
I know on one of our fundraisers, I think it was the actual grand opening, we hired a company with a system. I don't know if we wanna go there. Well, is there a decimal thing? What's that?
Let's leave it.
That's what I was trying to look up.
Let's leave it to our town noise ordinance and call it a day.
And how loose is our town noise ordinance?
I guess they're looking at it, and I guess maybe, Mr. Macy, we look to you to help interpret our certainly less than perfect ordinances. I think if you look at the noise ordinance, I think it is couched in terms of the sensibilities of an ordinary person, or words to that effect. I don't know the details of that. I think at one point in time, I was told, I may be wrong, but we did have an objective standard for decibels at the property line. I could be wrong, I don't know that's in our ordinance anymore. Our noise ordinance talks about sensibilities of an ordinary person, or words to that effect.
Neither of us can find a noise ordinance. We have the noisy animals and the fowl, but that's as close as I got. Noise, GP. No person shall disturb the peace and quiet of any other ordinary person by creating excessively loud or unreasonable noise or similar disturbances. Prohibited loud and or unreasonable noise shall include but not be limited to, and then there's a list. I gotta tell you, noise ordinances are very difficult to prosecute. Let's not kid ourselves. So, I mean, and those that have the sound at the lot line, in this day and age, they tape it, and nobody knows if you turned up the volume or you didn't turn up the volume, and you know, so you gotta send your police out there, and they gotta have the special equipment. It's just, you know. I mean, all we can do is tell you the report. He's asked that it be stricken totally, and, you know, the applicant shall be allowed to have 3 fundraisers per year with prior notification. I gotta tell you, if the clerk was, you know, making certain suggestions, and they're good, but if you don't have a number in there, then it really doesn't, and you really need it, because if you can have unlimited use, and all this is a filing requirement with the clerk, then it doesn't really serve any purpose. If it's really the amplification is the only thing you're going to, once you've taken the number out, and all it is a filing requirement with the clerk, if the amplification is what you're trying to control, I thought it was something else until we got to this aspect of the meeting.
If you've got your schedule totally full, do you know how many fundraisers you would have? Because by the sounds of it, every time I go by, the lot is full. So you must not have any open days to have an unexpected fundraiser.
You're probably pretty accurate.
So I would think if he's got his schedule full, you should be able to tell us how many fundraisers you're gonna have, and those are the nights you can have amplification.
Question, maybe going sideways, but even to Attorney Macy there, and it's not fair to ask that on such short notice, but leaving aside this issue, do thoughts come to your mind about better noise ordinances than what you've looked at briefly with ours? I realize that's kind of a loaded question.
No, the answer is no. Those that have written it on decibels, it's a reasonable person standard, but the only ones you're ever really gonna prosecute are extreme situations. And that's just my, you know, I was a prosecutor for 10 years, and so that's the unfortunate answer. Sure, I've seen much more sophisticated ones, but then you've got to have the police equipped with all of the devices and the tools and the availabilities and everything else. So you're usually dealing with the neighbor who's videotaping or taping it, and we rarely do we take those in, and the judge has to try to struggle with whether the reasonable person standard's not the problem, because that's a basis in all of law, and the judge decides whether the reasonable person should have lived with that noise or not. On this issue, if we know Catholic Memorial is 8, you know, and we know that he has I think the neighbors were concerned, and I'm speculating. They were concerned that he didn't, at some point, put in an amplification system and use it all the time. You know, 10 o'clock at night, half price on dogs for the rest of the night to get rid of them, or until they're gone. You know, they don't want that. Could we, instead of 3, have 12 or 15, or is there some number, so we know it's not every day? He's not asking for it every day. He's asking for, I'm don't want to put words in your mouth, Catholic Memorial, so we don't have to give him a ticket. And do you have a guesstimate of how many maximum times, other than Catholic Memorial, or in addition to Catholic Memorial, you would think that amplification might be used?
We had 3 fundraisers our first year and 2 last year. I mean, that's all I could go off of. And someone could call tomorrow
But
and
if you
say,
were
I'm coming up to your place in a month, and I would like to do X, Y, or Z.
Sure. If you were asked to give a number, again, we're gonna try to resolve this, you know, would you say 20? Would you say there's no way you'd ever allow or need amplification more than 20 times? 15 times? So, if I'm hearing you correctly, the first year you had 4 and 8 for Catholic Memorial and 4?
I don't know exactly how many games, but I mean, a typical baseball summer season, I think is around 20 games, which half are home and half are away, somewhere in there. It's been a while since I played high school. Yeah, I guess I would feel comfortable with no more than 5 outside of CMH games. I mean, if you're ultimately looking for a number, you know, this year they could have 9 games, next year they could
So-
have 8.
10 max and 5, 15. I'm just trying to come up with a number.
Right.
We've got to do that and move on.
I understand.
Call
So
it
it's 15
Call it
number?
15.
Okay. So there'll be a
From
maximum
3 to
of 15 special events that,
Those
Boom.
events where
Events.
amplification can be used. Why call them special events, why call them fundraiser, if all we're trying to do is make sure the neighbors aren't going to have amplification every day, it can be 15, a maximum of 15 events.
Let's move on.
Okay.
I was out for a second, were there any other comments other than the dusk and the defining special events that struck the chord with anyone?
Just to make a comment, I mean, I think your definition of sunset in lieu of dusk is is exactly the way to go. Everybody agree?
I know you want to move on, Mr. Chairman, does he have to file with the clerk the 15 events? So at least we're on record of when they are, so we know that there are 15 events and what they can file them all summer long until he gets up to 15. It's not that he has to do them in advance, it's just he has to place them on file, and they can even be the day before. It's just for her to keep track of what the 15 events are.
well, we know when 10 of them are.
No problem.
Okay.
Do you have language, Mr. Robarch, that you can share with us on number 7?
Yeah, we're using the old number 7, changing it to 15 fundraisers and, or 15 events with amplification and notification to the town.
Any other issues within here until we get to 17?
Just to be clear, the games are over at 10:30 and the park's empty by 11. Is that what we agreed on?
Lights are out, field lights are out.
Right.
And the park is emptied of public, yes.
By 11.
On to 17. What is the pleasure of the board?
Well, I guess I'll start. I am not gonna be able to support this because, like a number of the residents had stated, I don't think we need alcohol at youth programs. I was very heavily involved in Scouts. I heard comments, people are coming for the weekend, they have to have, it's a recreation. Well, I was involved in Scouts where we went away for camp for a week to a Boy Scout camp and had no liquor, no smoking, no alcohol, no nothing. And if adults can't hold off for a weekend without drinking, then I guess they better get their kids in something else. Because I don't think alcohol has a place for, like some of the people said, you can't have it in high school, but we're gonna let it at a park that's younger than high school. I just can't support that.
Mike? Comments? Mr. Fisher?
I have to echo what Mr. Flanagan wrote. You got a lot of events that go on where alcohol served. I don't know if it's our obligation to make that decision and say, you can't ever do this. Saratoga Park, that's another baseball diamond, I believe, serves alcohol. I don't know of any issues that have ever happened there. The Waukesha County Fair serves alcohol. I don't know of any issues that have happened there. Freeman Friday night, has alcohol. I don't know of any issues there. Town of Genesee Park, you get a permit and you can have beer. Same with Frame. And I know there's a multitude of church functions that the beer tents, they're a big fundraiser. So I don't know if we can really tell somebody how to run their business and say, you can't do this, if it's well within the statutes of the law.
No, we need to move on. Are we gonna vote on this as it sits then? That's where we're at.
Well, the actual motion on the table is to approve the plan commission's recommendation, or to move it for discussion purposes. So I think ultimately we have to withdraw that motion and make a motion, because we can't approve a motion that's only for discussion purposes. It won't serve the purpose of getting the discussion. So I appreciate the motion being made, but I think we need to clarify what the new motion is.
So you'll need to withdraw your motion, Jim, and Brian, I believe.
Right. What's up with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Is there a new motion on the table?
If someone were of a mind to make a motion to adopt the recommendation of the plan commission with the two additional changes, that being changing it from dusk to sunset, and number 7 to read, and Mr. Lubarczyk and I were working on it, the applicant shall be allowed to have a maximum of 15 events per year with the use of voice amplification apparatus with prior notification to the town of Waukesha clerk's office. Those were the two changes that you discussed. I'm not saying you have to do them, but I'm just trying to summarize. If someone were to make a motion, do the motion to make a recommendation, to adopt the recommendation of the plan commission with those two additional modifications. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a motion? I will make a motion to adopt the recommendation of the Plan Commission with the two specified changes. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Discussion.
Well, I think the main thing, the elephant in the room is the liquor license.
Well, there's not a liquor license. It's the ability to ask for one.
Well, exactly, but that's where the delay and the hesitation is. Like I said, I don't know if that's within our authority to tell a business owner that he can't operate within the confines of the law.
Anybody else? Let's vote. All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
2. Motion carries.